Hi, you're watching Floyd Steinberg's YouTube channel. This is Picotracker Advance, an all-round improved and better looking version of last year's Picotracker. So if you want to see what has been improved apart from the sleek exterior of this device, this might be the video for you. The usual disclaimer, I was sent a review unit for making this video. Apart from that, no money changed hands here. So if you're interested, please join me in the next minutes. Here we go. Picotracker has come a long way since I first covered the DIY kit 2 years ago. The new version here is everything Picotracker was and everything existing users asked for. A bigger screen, an aluminum enclosure, more CPU power, more RAM, and a lot of firmware updates under the hood. The new hardware is bigger, with more screen real estate, and the metal enclosure gives the device a hefty, worthy feel. The screen is bright and easy to read, and the buttons have that satisfying clickiness to them. The new hardware also has an internal speaker now, and an audio input, which we'll take a look at in a minute. Since you've probably not seen my previous videos or don't remember them, let's walk through everything Picotracker Advance is or can do, and then I'll give you a conclusion and a comparison to the older model. Picotracker, as the name suggests, is a tracker-style sequencer. Its main functionality is playing back samples chromatically. A piece of music is called a song here, and a song has 8 tracks represented by 8 columns on the song overview screen. Each row in this table holds a so-called chain, which is a list of up to 16 phrases, and a phrase is a list of up to 16 notes or events. Each row in a phrase can hold a note event and up to 2 control events like arpeggiators, filter controls, and more. An event can also hold a table, which is another 3-column table full of controller data. The notes you enter will play back an instrument. Instruments are high-quality audio samples that can be played back at different pitches, or they can be MIDI outputs for controlling external synthesizers and other MIDI gear. Each instrument can also have automation and table assignments that are triggered each time this instrument plays a note. Enough theory, let's put this into practice by creating a simple dance track. I have a prototype Picotracker here, and it came with an SD card full of samples. For the sampling to work correctly, I needed to replace this SD card with one by SanDisk or Samsung. We can navigate the various screens of Picotracker by holding down the navigation key, then pressing the arrow buttons. In the bottom left corner of the screen, you see a map of all available screens highlighting the one you're at currently. Go to the project screen and create a new project. This will take you back to an empty song screen. Now, I could use one of the samples that came pre-installed on the internal SD card, but let's grab our own samples using the new sample editor. For this, press Edit and Play simultaneously, which will take you to the record screen. We can capture audio from the line input or the internal microphone. I'm going to use my XSynth here, connect its audio output to the Picotracker's audio input and press play to start recording. Then play a note on the XSynth, ideally a C3 note. I'll start with some drums, but later I'll also add pads, bass, pianos, plugs and other things without showing the process again. After capturing the sample, we can edit it, trimming and normalizing namely. Press save and load to add the sample to your project's sample pool. Then navigate back to the song screen. Press the enter key once to create a chain and then navigate right. Press enter again to create a phrase and navigate right once again. Press enter once more to add a note, then navigate right once more. Change the instrument type to sample by holding enter and pressing right. Then select the sample you just captured and head back to the phrase screen. Let's add some bass drum hits. We can now add more instruments by moving the cursor to the second column and changing the I01 entry here. If you move to the instrument screen now, you'll be able to choose another sample. Tracker music has always been about efficiency. It originated on 80s home computers, which had a very limited amount of memory and usable voices. One technique to circumvent these restrictions was to play back different samples in the same track. Let's do that by placing the hi-hat between the bass drum hits. After filming that last segment, a new firmware was released that enabled sample slicing, so let's take a look at that. You can install firmware updates from the menu, and after rebooting, I found a new sample slice option in the instrument menu. Here, you can also adjust slices. I've sampled a very simple drum loop here, and Picotracker is nice enough to explain this new function on screen. So here I've created 4 slices: bass drum and snare drum, and fast hi-hat and slow hi-hat. You can move the dividing line of each slice using Enter and the cursor keys, and Edit plus cursor keys lets you zoom in or out for fine adjustments. After you set up your slices, you can go back to the phrase and select the instrument you've sliced. Instead of the note names, you'll now see slice numbers in the left column. This way, you can easily remix and reorder any given piece of music. Back to a track. I've sampled the bass sound, the plug and the pad, and added them to the track. I think the pad sounds a little bit bland, so let's spice it up by adding filter and stutter effects. Now I could go and use the 2 control columns in the phrase for that, but assigning a table to that instrument is more effective and flexible. If you choose a table on the bottom of the instrument screen, Picotracker will play back that table every time you play a note with that particular instrument, so we don't need to enter all that controller information again and again. You also free up the 2 main control columns for other things to do. So move down a bit, and here I'll enter some filter cutoff frequency and volume control commands. First I set filter cutoff frequency and resonance, then I tell Picotracker to do an upward sweep within 16 steps, then a quick downward sweep in the last 4 steps. I can set the playback speed of the table by adding a groove command at its top. Here's what we've got now. The pad is a bit too dominant, so let's adjust the volume in the mixer screen. Before we look into arranging sequencers, let's talk about single cycle waveforms. You can find these on the SD card that comes with Picotracker in the AKWF folder. These are basic waves like saw, sine, pulse, which you can loop in the instrument editor and then shape using control commands and tables. Here's a simple saw wave, which can be repeated endlessly using the loop function. I'll apply a filter and pitch sweep and a fast arpeggiator to this, which gives us this effect. A typical 80s 8-bit music sound. You can define up to 4 notes in the arpeggiator, which are played back relatively to the root note. The pieces for my track are falling into place. I want to have part of relative silence on there as well. I'm going to use Picotracker's MIDI functions for that. On the instrument screen, you can select MIDI for the instrument and then set up channels, programs, and so on. In this example, I'll connect the XSynth by TRS MIDI to play this soft pad here. In the phrase editor, we can utilize various MIDI controls, one of them playing back chords. Here you can enter the numbers relative to the root note to play chords with up to 4 notes. You can send MIDI CC commands from here as well. Right, I want to play back 4 chords here that last 1 phrase each, so let's create 4 phrases and insert the chord command. Later, I noticed that these chords are not long enough, they have to stretch over 2 phrases. No problem, just insert an empty phrase between 2 phrases in the chain. Okay, I've arranged a demonstration track from all phrases and chains I've created. I've used all tracks available to me, which often wasn't possible on the first Picotracker. Chain 7 here is empty. Before I play this demo, here are some effects I've made using Picotracker only. The first one is a classic noise riser. I've sampled noise from the XSynth and Picotracker is doing a resonant upwards filter sweep on it. There's also a MIDI track for the warm pad sound here, so this track is coming from the XSynth directly. Picotracker is connected to its MIDI input and audio input. I've already shown you the stutter and filter effects on this pad. I've added filter cutoff and resonance commands to each bass note individually, which gives us this sequence. Also sample layering for saving some precious slots. All in all, Picotracker Advance is a significant upgrade over the previous DIY version. The build quality and the design is great. The design is reminiscent of older Apple devices. One could say you get more of everything here. CPU power and RAM have tripled, the operating speed is faster, the screen is bigger, and the materials used here are better. However, I can't conclude this video without mentioning the new price tag, which has more than tripled over the DIY kit you can buy on Symphonics store. And one could argue that 3 times the power equals 3 times the price is a fair deal. The only problem I have with that is that at the time of making this video, the soft synths found on the original Picotracker are not here yet. And some of the functions I've shown you in this video were fresh out of the press, so to speak. In other words, Picotracker Advance at the moment is a promise of a great future. Now, from my experience, I know that the Picotracker team is keeping its promises. And I've talked to Max behind the scenes, and he said they're planning for envelopes, more effects, more soft synths in the future, all powered by the enormously more performance CPU built into this device. But now, in January of 2026, these things have yet to materialize, and you can follow the updates on Syphonic's GitHub page. Still, I had a lot of fun using this device, and sampling directly into it is a big step forward in quickly coming up with fresh sounds. Okay, enough of the talking, here's the finished demo track. Yeah, and that's it for today. Picotracker Advance, the more powerful, more sturdy, better designed, but more expensive version of last year's Picotracker. So what do you think? Is this a worthy upgrade? Are you interested in buying it? Please leave a comment under this video. And if you think this was a good YouTube video, please do the YouTube thing. If you want to support what I'm doing here financially, you can do so on Patreon or by becoming a channel member using the button under this video. You can also listen to my music on Bandcamp, Spotify or Apple Music. But as usual, none of this is mandatory. As always, thanks for watching and see you again next week. Bye bye.